Good evening. I hope all of you are well. We're learning Maseches Shekalim, Daf Yomi tonight, starting at the very bottom. Tes Zayin and Beis at a new halacha, halacha Beis. We mentioned a couple of days ago that there were 13 hishtachavayos. There were 13 times that people would be mishtachave throughout the mikdash. As they were walking throughout the mikdash, it wasn't part of a specific avodah. Just as they walked around, there were 13 locations, kind of like if you could imagine Kaviyachal, there was a sign like bow here, bow here, and 13 of them will say machlokas in the Tanaim as to what exactly the scope of this was, but our Mishnah is very clear. Halacha Beis Masnisin, at the very bottom of Tezayin Amud Beis, writes the Mishnah as follows. Where were these bowings? Where did they take place? Says the Gemara, Arba b'tzafon, 4 were in the north, Arba b'darim, 3 were in the south, Shalosh b'mizrach, 3 were in the east, Beis b'marav, and 2 were in the west. Keneged Shlosha Asar Shiurim, because there were 13 shiurim in the Azara. The Azara is the area, not the whole mikdash, but if you could imagine that the Beis HaMikdash is 2 squares next to one another. One side possesses the Heichal, the other side is the Ezrat Nashim. We're talking about the side that has the Heichal, and there were 13 gates surrounding that, according to the Tanakama, according to the Shita in the Gemara. So let's get into it. The Romim, the ones that were on the southern wall, but Smuchim Lamarav, starting from the west, what were the 4 that were on that wall? Shar HaElyon, Shar HaDelek, Shar HaBechoros, Shar HaMayim. These were the 4 shiurim at which there would be hishtachavaya, and then asks the Mishnah, "V'lama nikra shmo shar hamayim." This is a machlokas in the Mishnah. Shebo machnisin sluchis shel nisuch hamayim v'chag. One of them is because the water that was brought in by sukkis for nisuch hamayim. Rabbi Lazar ben Yaakov Omer, not because of that, but bo hamayim mefakim ve'asidim lahotzi lihios yotzin mitachas miftan habayis. Because as we will see in the Gemara today in full color, there was a source of water that would come from the Kodesh, from the Kodesh HaKodashim, and emanate outwards toward the east, cutting through the Heichal, and then up to the Mizbeach, and then past the Mizbeach, and then out of the Mizbeach and into Yerushalayim, and we'll see where it stops, and whether or not that water could be used for mikvah water. We're going to get into some of the nuance of La'asilava, of what that water would look like. But either way, these are 2 shitas, either because of Nisuch HaMayim, or the water La'asilavo, that the Mishnah refers to this shar as the Shar HaMayim. Le'umasan, 3rd line, Yadzayin Baralef Le'umasan. What did we speak about? We spoke about one wall already. Here's B'tzafon Smuch in the Marav, on the northern wall, starting at the west. Shar Yechonya, Shar HaKorban, Shar HaNashim, Shar HaShir. Why did it get the name of Shar Yechonya? It says the Gemara, it says the Mishnah, Shebo Yatze Yechonya Begaluso, because that was the last time he was in the Mikdash, Yechonya. This is the beginning of Yechonya Melech, right? We said in the beginning of Eicha. What is Yechonya Melech? What is it? Melech Yehuda. Is that what it says in the beginning of Eicha, that this was with the shar that he left in it? What? No. Oh, is it really? Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, maybe I don't know. Yeah, but that, yeah, okay. I was referencing the Navi. Yechonya Melech, whatever. But it's in Esther. Okay, yeah. All right, I don't know what that's. Okay. So anyways, it was named after Yechonya. Shebo Yatze Yechonya Begaluso, fine. Sheba Mizrach, what about the eastern wall? Shar Nikanor v'Shar Pishpashin, V'Shnei Pishpashin, V'Shnei Pishpashin. There was Shar Nikanor, and there were 2 doors that were next to it. V'Shnei Pishpashin Hayulo, Echad Mimino v'Echad Mismolo, and that was 3 more. So that's Nikanor and the 2 next to it. V'Shnei B'Marav, and 2 on the western wall, V'Lo Hela and Shem, and they did not have a name. So we're opening with the Gemara now, Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, and we're going to analyze this Mishnah. It says the Gemara, Masnisun Abba Yosa ben Yochanan. That's the sheet of ben Yochanan. Damar Kneged Shlosh Asar Shiurim, that it had to do with the gate, that there were 13 gates that surrounded the Azara. However, Kirabanan Shiva Sharm Hayuba Azara. However, the rabbis had a tradition that there were only 7 gates that surrounded the Azara, but they equally had a Masorah that there were still 13 Ishtachavayos. So how did they balance out the fact that there were only 7 Shi'arim? The Tana of our Mishnah clearly indicated that it was based on Shi'arim, yet the Rabbanan held that there were only 7 Shi'arim. How did they get to 13? So the Rabbanan, where did they get up to 13? Answers the Gemara, Ki the Tanin and Taman, Shlosh Pratos Hayubot. There were 13 breaches in the times of the Chashmonaim around an area that surrounded the Mikdash, not in the Mikdash, but an area that surrounds the Mikdash called the Soreg, and there were 13 pratzos in them. Chepirtu Malchei Yavan. that the Greek kings, they made holes in the walls. V'chazru ve'ugedarum b'nei Chashmonai. Chashmonaim rebuilt them. V'gazru kenegdan shloshas reish tachavayos. So that's the machloket between them. Do the 13 ishtachavayos come from the fact that there are, according to our Mishnah, 13 sha'arim around the Azara? Or do they come from the fact that there were 13 breaks in the soreg, in the surrounding fence that was around the mikdash, not the actual base of mikdash itself, but the building, the wall around it? Is that why we have the 13 ishtachavayos there? Okay, so that's the machlokas. What?
The diagram says 11.
It says 11. It says keneged shloshes reish tachavayos. What do you mean?
I just tried to count them.
Oh no, you can't. No, they because they patched the walls. That's what it would look like right now if it was rebuilt.
Okay.
But when it was broken during the time, no, I see what you're saying now. When you count, yeah, the mikdash, what you're looking at is a perfected picture. But in the times of the Chashmonaim, there were 13 pratzos made, and they filled in the ones that were nifrats, and that's what we do the ishtachavayos for. So we spoke about the water that will start in the Kodesh HaKodashim, and let's get into some very some significant detail here. Ksiv, the pasuk writes as follows: V'ayah bayomahu yatsu mayim chaim Yerushalayim. There will be flowing water that will come from Yerushalayim. Tani, the Brisa says as follows: Mibes Kodesh HaKodashim al paroches kikarne silai v'chilai. Coming from the actual inside the Kodesh HaKodashim, behind the paroches, will have a very, very thin amount of water, like the width of the antenna of a snail. That's what the Gemara says. And then from there, the water will increase. Meaning paroches, from the paroches itself, mizbeach hadahav kikarne chagavim. Then they'd have a flow of water that's a little bit wider, like the antenna of a grasshopper. And then still widening out more, mimizbach hazav ad azaros, until the azara kechut shel shasi, like one of the strings on a loom. And then it gets even more, min hazaras ad miftan abayis, until the threshold of the base of mikdash kechut shel arev. This is like another type of string, a little bit wider. So you could imagine just a very small trail of water that increases slightly, increases still more, and it's going to increase still more. Mikan va'elach kimi piapach. It's as if you're pouring out of a pitcher of some kind. See, the pasuk writes, "V'hinei mayim mifakim min hakosef hayimanis," that there's going to be water flowing on the right side. And then the next pasuk continues and says, "V'teitza ish kadim v'kav biyado v'yomad elef be'amah." It's going to go out 1,000 amah v'yavireni b'mayim me afsaim, and then it's going to be up to a person's ankles. And the Gemara explains it's ad karsula, giving us the modern parlance, or their modern parlance, I should say, of what karsula means. That the water is going to. This is totally antithetical to logic. You'd assume that the larger volume of water would minimize as it flows. Here, this is total backwards, right? Where it's lasted level. This is not regular stuff. This is all miraculous, where it starts out with only the width of an antenna of a snail, tiny. We're talking microns in our modern day measurements. And how is that exactly leading to enough water to get up to the ankles of people? It doesn't even make any sense. All of this is al pines. And then after it gets up to his ankles, v'yamad elef, he'll measure another 1,000 amos v'yavirin v'mayim birkayim. V'mayim birkayim, it's going to go up to his knees. Birkaya, that's a lot of water. V'yamad elef, and another 1,000 v'yavirin meimos naim, it's going to be up to one's thighs. Mikan va'elech, and from there it's going to get even more. V'yamad elef, another 1,000 nachal asher lo uchal la'avor. It's going to be a stream of water that you won't even be able to cross. And then says the Gemara, afilu lebiranin gedola eino yachol la'avor bo. We just had this in our world, where there's a huge boat that couldn't travel in the straits of the water. So this apparently happens, but this is all stemming, lasid lavo. It's all stemming from the tiny little snail's antenna width of water that's coming from the kodesh behind the parochas. Often in Yerushalmi, when we see my time, it actually doesn't mean what is the reason as much as it means what is the source. And here, this makes perfect sense. That you won't be able to cross over. Why won't it be able to cross over? So answers the Gemara from the pasuk, because there's so much water that they are sachu. Mahu me sachu. What does that mean? Milashut, that you can't swim. It's very interesting. The Gemara says that a boat can't travel because a person can't swim. I don't know. I could think of plenty of circumstances where I will not be able to swim, but a boat will be perfectly fine. Choppy waters would be just the most simple of those examples, but nevertheless, the Meforshim here, based on this Gemara, do equate the two. And we know, says the Gemara, that the word sachu, we know today, a brechat chiyah is a swimming pool. We know the word chiyah today means swimming. But what's the precedent for Meisachu that it means that? So it says the Gemara, Amar Rav Huna, Be'asrin, where I live, Karu l'shayata sachvana, that we call swimming, we call it sachvana, which is similar to the word sachu. Ufeiras yadav b'kirbo kasher yefares hasochev lischos. And it says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to stretch out his hand. And we see similarly the word shocheh. Let's see how the Gemara explains soche, excuse me. So asks the Gemara, Mal lischos. Amar Rabbi Yossi, Bei Rabbi Bon, Maya de mismalalin ba'alma. It's the water that everyone's going to talk about. The swimming that we are not going to be able to do when this water increases to this level is all talking about the Atzi level. Continuing on that same theme, Ksiv, the pasuk writes, "Vayomu yemakor niftach lebeis David losh v'yerushalayim l'chata." So Lenida has mentioned that can a woman go to the mikvah in this water? Can this water can it be used for the mechatas? So let's see. Says the Gemara, Reb Shmuel bar Nachman b'shem Rabbi Yonasan, mi beis David, from the Beis Hamikdash ve'ad Yoshvei Yerushalayim, until the place where people live in Yerushalayim. Sherun lenidu l'chatzos, a woman could go to the mikvah for both of those. Mikan va'elech mei ta'arobasem. At that point, the waters mingle. When it comes to hilchos nida, a woman needs a mikvah that has megeshem. But when it comes to chatas, that type of water has to be flowing water, and therefore once the waters mix, that is not considered flowing anymore, and therefore it would not work. But sharing l'nida, psulim l'mechatas, it would work for a nida, but not for mechatas. However, Amar Rebbe Lazar, he doesn't agree. Me based of it, we had Yoshua Yerushalayim. Everyone does agree. Taka like the previous shita, the sharing l'nida l'chatas. But mikan va'elach, because Yerushalayim slopes down after that whole mountain, and when you look down, you'll see that there's a huge slope there. So me katav riso, saying though it slopes there, and in that water, that everyone agrees, psulim l'nida l'chatas, that water is ineligible. Let's continue talking about the waters around Eretz Yisrael. Ksiva yomer elai hamayim ha'ela yotzim el hagililah hakadmona ze yam shel samchu. The samchu waters were found seemingly by the base of Italy. That's what the Meforshim say. This may have been a time, at least I don't know how this plays out in our understanding of the topography of continents, but according to some of the commentaries here, the continents were still merged as one, and it was only in Onesh that they were separated, but it hadn't happened yet at this time. So Samchu is a body of water near Italy. Yardu al ha'arava ze yam shel Tveria. This water is a reference to obviously the Yam shel Tveria. Hayama ze yam hamelach, the Dead Sea. El hayama hamutzaim ze yam hagadol, talking about the Mediterranean. Why was it called mutzaim? V'lama nikra shmo mutzaim in the plural, that it came out twice. What does that mean? There was twice that the waters overflowed in the Mediterranean. These are the two times when the Mediterranean overflowed. So the Gemara takes a little bit more detail here. When it overflowed, where did it overflow to? Rabbi Lazar b'shem Rabbi Chanina. He says, Barishona yatsa ad Kalbaria. It went into a particular city called Kalbaria. It's also found in Italy. And then Uvishnia, the second time it overflowed, Yatsa ad Kepe Barbaria. It did so until it reached the coast of Barbary. This is found in Africa. I'm of course here, right? Barbary, I've never heard of it. Is it a destination of some kind? Have you been there?
No.
Oh, I've never heard of it before. Rav Chanina, he has a little bit of a different opinion that the first time Barishona Yatsa ad Kipe Barbaria, to the coast of Barbary, Uvishnia Yatsa ad Akko ve'ad Yafo, and the second time it was up to Akko and up to Yafo. And this is based on psukim that the water flowed till there, that when the Mediterranean overflowed, ad po savo velo sosiv, up until this place and no further, and the drush is ad Akko tavo velo tosiv, HaKadosh Baruch Hu stopped the water there. And then the next language is ufo, Yashis begon galecha ufo. There's a plan word ad yafo from ufo in the pasuk Ashis geon galecha, that your waves can be shown. So that's what the Gemara says. Now going back to the water that came from the Beis Hamikdash, nicha yama rabba v'yama demilcha. I understand the water that's going to come out of the Kodesh HaKodashim. I understand that that's going to be needed for the Yama Rabbah, and it's going to be needed for the Yama Demilcha. That I understand because, says the Gemara, Bishvil limatzkein, in order to make sure that it's sweet. The water from the Beis Hamikdash gave a good flavor to the water. But Yama de Tveria, Yama de Samchu, why did those need it? Those were already sweet. So answers the Gemara, it wasn't for the sweetness, for the drinking of the water, but it had the bracha of creating more fish. The Rabos dagosam dechsibe, because the pasuk says we're going to make more fish there. Lemina tihia dagosam, lemine minim tihia dagosam. That there's a multitudes of fish. There's so many different types of foods, so many different types of fish. And in fact, the Gemara tells a story to this exact end. Tani, Amar Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, Ma'aseh shalachti l'tzaidan. He went to a particular city. Ve'viu lefanai yoser mishlosh meos mine dagim b'tamcho yachad. A platter of 300 different types of fish. That's a lot of fish. And all of that was from the bracha. So going back to the psukim, the pasuk says seemingly a contradiction, "V'nirpu'u hamayim," that the water would become literally healed, but it doesn't mean healed. It just means that it would be edible and drinkable. And bitzosav ugiva'av v'lo yerafeu lemelech nitanu. And it also says that it will not be healed. So which one is it? Ksivanir pu'u hamayim ve'at amers v'lo yerafeu hamayim. Which one is it? You can't tell me both. It's either going to be fixed or it's not going to be fixed. The pasuk has a contradiction. Answers the Gemara. You're absolutely right. It was a makom hu ushmo v'lo yerafu. The name of the place was lo yerafu, that it should not be fixed. That was the name of the city, lo yerafu. And what was going on here is that only that place would have salt water. All the other places would no longer be salt water, so that we would be able to have drinkable water. Let's learn more of these psukim. Ksiv, the pasuk says, "Ve'alanachal yale al svatzum mizel mizeh." On each side of the water, called eitz ma'achal, there's going to be trees for eating. Lo yibola lehu. All of the leaves are going to be perfect. They're not gonna die. V'lo yitom piryo lechadashav yivaker. And the fruits are going to last forever. Lechadashav yivaker. We're going to have to see what those two words mean. It translates literally about bikurim lechadashav. It will make new bikurim, new crops, new foods. It says the Gemara Tani Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Lepisha ba'olam hazeh. Tavua grains osel l'shisha chodashim, takes 6 months to grow grains. The ilan osel l'shnei masar chodesh, and trees it takes them 12 months to grow fruits. Aval la'asi lavo, in the future it'll be much faster. Hatvua osel l'chodesh echad ve'ilan osel l'shnei chodashim. Everything is much faster. It's 6 times faster. Grains will grow in a month, and trees will grow fruits in 2 months. My taima, and says Rabbi Yehuda, what is the pasuk that says that this is the case? L'chadashav yivaker, l'chadashav in the plural multiple 2 months. So that's talking about the tree. Ve'ilan l'shnei chodashim, ve'ilan also l'shnei chodashim, that l'chadashav in the plural will take 2 months. However, Rabbi Yossi disagrees with this approach of Rabbi Yehuda, and he says like this. Amar Rabbi Yossi, l'fisha ba'olam hazeh tvua osa l'shisha chodashim ve'ilan osa l'shnei masar chodesh. Yes, he agrees that in this world it takes 6 months to grow grains and 12 months for a tree to grow fruit. 15 days. Could you imagine planting any type of grain, and 15 days later it's ready to harvest? In 1 month you can grow an apple tree. It's an unbelievably quick thing that's going to happen. This actually happened by the time of Yoel Hanavi, as is found in Tanakh, and they brought a korban omer from this type of growth that took place in 15 days. My time, what is the Mari Makom for this? More umalkosh barishon. More umalkosh barishon. So this is a drasha. Usually it's yoreh, one type of rain, and malkosh is another. And here both of them happened at the same time. So based on how the psukim are learned, it implies that it was done very, very quickly. And that's the shita of Rabbi Yossi, that the grains were made in 15 days and the fruits were grown in 1 month. So Rabbi Yossi l'chadashav yivaker. What does Rabbi Yossi do with the pasuk of l'chadashav yivaker? According to Rabbi Yehuda, l'chadashav yivaker was a plural. It taught us that it took 2 months for the tree. Great, wonderful. However, what does he do with it if it says only 1 month? So he says b'chol chodesh v'chodesh yem yivaker. He explains the word. It's not that it means 2 months. In every single month, you were able to grow a full crop on a tree. So that's how he explains the pasuk. And the rest of the pasuk reads ve'alehu l'trufa, that the leaves were medication. Rav Yochanan Amar, Karpe, the medication, or whatever, that which you can gain out of it, is matzitz aleh, from the word mitzitza, to suck out of it, that one could basically suck out the nutrients from a leaf, and it would be considered sustenance for him, and it's based on the word utraf, mizona, that the word traf is connected to the word mazo. However, not everyone agrees that that's pshat here. Let's understand this pasuk a little more homiletically. Rav Shmuel Chadamar lahatir peh shelamalan. This was coming to teach us that you can fix the top of your mouth. According to some of the Meforshim, that means that there are those who were not able to speak and now they're able to. Chadamar lahatir peh shelamatan, and some says that it helps one in regard to their lower mouth, namely it helps them to go to the bathroom. That's a laxative of some kind. And other Amoraim say as follows: Chanin and Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, they have a different machlokas about this. Chadamar lahatir pe'akaros. Pe'akaros is a reference to the cervix, to the womb, that women who were not able to have children, if they were eating this food, then they would be able to then have children. Chadamar lahatir pe'ilnim, the people who were not able to speak are now able to speak. All right, good. That brings us to a continuation of the Mishnah that says Ula Masan B'Tzafa, and we said that there were some other gateways. Remember, our Tana in our Mishnah says that the Yud Gimel Ishtachavayos had to do with the gates that were in the Azara. So now let's talk about the ones that were B'Tzafon. Ad Motzei, B'Shash Ala Nebuchadnezzar Lakan, when Nebuchadnezzar was coming toward Eretz Yisrael, Bavi Yashav Lo, the Dofne Shel Antuchia. He was on the edge of the city of Antuchia, and the Jews knew about it. V'yatza Sanhedrin Gadol, this is a crazy story. V'yatza Sanhedrin Gadol Likroso. So the Sanhedrin Gadola, they went to him, and here's what they asked him. V'amra lo, they said to him, Higia Zman Habayis Hazeh Lecharev, was HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes there, that we should have the Beis HaMikdash be destroyed yet? And he said, Omar Lehen, not yet. Also, Shemachti Alechem Tenuhuli, give me the person who's in charge, V'ani Holech, and I'll leave you guys alone. Bo v'ramale Yoyachin Melech Yehuda, and they went over to the person who was the king at the time, Nebuchadnezzar, Boyalach, he wants you. Says the Gemara, Kevan Sheshama Mehen Kach. Once Yehoiachin heard this, Natal Maftechot Shel Beis Hamikdash. He took the key ring that had all of the keys for the Beis Hamikdash, Ala L'Gago Shel Heichal, and went on the top of the Beis Hamikdash. Amar Lafanav, and he spoke to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shel Olam. L'She'avar, back in the day, Hayinu Ne'emanim Lach, we were trustworthy to serve you. And we were then able to use the keys. But now that we're not doing our part, we need to give the keys back to you. And we don't know really, it wasn't clear from this story exactly what happened. So the Amoraim, we're trying to figure out what happened. So it says the Gemara, train Amoraim. There are two Amoraim that different sheets. It's Yerchad Amar Zirakon V'Odlo Yardu. We threw it up to the sky and they never came down. V'chad Amar, no, Ba Kimin Yad Unataltan Miyado, and a hand of some kind hopped out of the sky. I don't know what I guess it's all, I don't even know what to tell you. The hand came out of the sky and took the keys from them. And Kevan Shera'u, Kol Chori Yehuda came, once all of the greats of the city of Yehuda, of Yerushalayim, saw this. This is a terrible story. Alu the Rosh Gagosen, they went up to the roof, the Naflu Umesu. They jumped off of the building and they died. Adau Dechsiv, Masa Gei Chizayon, in the valley of Yerushalayim, the valley of seeing, which is a language, a flowery language to refer to Yerushalayim. What's everybody doing up on the roof? You've caused so many problems. Teshuos Malay, you've caused a city full of problems. Ir Homiyah, the city is in total disarray. What are you doing? And that brings us at a very morbid end to this particular halacha, and it brings us to halacha Gimel. We also said a couple of days ago, we're on the top of Yud Zayin Amud Beis, and we're starting halacha Gimel now 4 lines down. We spoke about the fact that there were 13 shulchanos in the Beis Hamikdash. We're now going to analyze them, and in the Gemara, we're going to question a few of them. We'll get all the way down to 4 lines till the bottom of the page, and then we will stop. There were 13 tables in the Beis Hamikdash. Shmona, 8 of them, shel shayish bebeis hamikbachayim. 8 of them were made out of marble or some type of stone, and it was in the place where they would do the cutting of the animals. Shalein madichin esakuravayim. That's where they would clean the insides of the animals. Ushnayim b'ma'arav hakevesh. 2 of them were on the western side of the ramp of the mizbeach. Echad shel shayish ve'echad shel ketef. One of those 2, the ones next to the ramp, one was shayish, which was in marble or stone, and the other was made out of kesef, made out of silver. Al shel shayish nosnin evarim. The one that's made out of marble, that's where they would put the avarim, the limbs of the animal. The al shel kesef klisharis, and on the silver one, that's where they would put the utensils that were to be used for the avoda of the mizbeach. Ushnayim be'ulam. 2 of them were inside of the Heichal building at large. Mibifnim al pesach habayit, right next to the doorway. Echad shel shayish ve'echad shel zav. We'll see that this is subject to a machlokas. Is it shayish? Is it not shayish? So according to this sheet in our Mishnah, it says one of those 2 tables was marble and the other was made of zahav. And here we run into a very important halachic idea. Al shel shayish noten lechem apanach b'chnisa. So when they were going to replace the breads of the lechem apanim, on the way into the Beis Hamikdash, they would put down the bread on the shayish, and then ve'al shel zahav b'yetziyaso. And when they would take out the lechem apanim, they put it on the gold table. And here the Mishnah drops a very important halachic sugya: shemalin b'kodesh v'lo moridin. The lechem apanim can only go up in kedusha. So therefore, if you're on the way in, you're going to put it on the table of shayish made out of marble. It's only appropriate to put it on the higher level, the nicer table on the way out, which is the one of gold. So echad shel zav mibifnim she'alav lechem hapanim tamid. And there was also one table that was gold inside, where the lechem hapanim was there all the time. Tamid. A lot of the Meforshim here speak about the idea of tamid being related to Talmud Torah. Imein Kamach Ein Torah, and therefore the Lechem Apanim is a reference to Talmud Torah, and it's a mitzvah tmidis that when we're not doing something else that compels us to not learn, we should be learning. That's a very, 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 very difficult mitzvah. One of my rabbeim in yeshiva back in the day used to say there's 24 hours in the day. Nebuch, you have to sleep. Okay, let's say you sleep 7 hours. The rest of the day is for learning. Okay, you have to go to the bathroom. That consumes a little of your day. Deduct from the 24 hours. Okay, you're left with 15 hours, whatever it is. You have to eat. You got family time. All of these are our obligations, absolutely. But when there's a free moment, so based on the concept of the lechem apanim being b'tmidius al hashulchan, that it were always there. So there are those who learn that is an extension, an idea, I should say, that's learned from here about the tmidius of the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Says the Gemara, in contrast with this Mishnah, arguing Tanya, Brisa disagrees with our Mishnah. It was al shel kesef. The first one that I mentioned in the Mishnah that was shel shayish. When you walked into the Heichal, it wasn't a gold one and a shayish one. It was a silver one. It was a gold one and a silver one. So that when you'd go in, you put the lechem onto the silver one. So says the Gemara as follows: Rabbi Yossi b'shem Reb Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak, Reb Chananya mati ba b'shem Rabbi Yochanan. He would say mati ba. He would go in the direction, mateh means to lean. He would say that it really was leaning in the direction of saying that it was probably more likely from Rabbi Yochanan. Leis kan shel kesef, you're not correct. It actually was made of shaish, like our Mishnah says, and not like the Brisa says here at the beginning of the Gemara. Bibnei shehu martiach. It was very, very hot. The metal, it's going to give off a lot of heat, and it's going to cause a problem. It's going to make the lechem apanim spoil. Says the Gemara, Lokein Tani, that's not true. That it didn't get ruined. There was a nace in the Beis Hamikdash that it was always going to be on a hot table. The lechem, the shulchan of zahav in the mikdash was also going to be very hot. So there was a miracle. What are you worried about? Shneimar lasum lechem chom biyom hilako. It's going to be hot on the day it's put there, just like on the day that it's removed. So then, what do you care if it's made out of zahav or if it's made out of kesef or if it's made out of shaish? It shouldn't make a difference. So says the Gemara an answer. It says the Gemara, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Omar, ein maskirin ma'asenisim. You can't set up the Beis Hamikdash that way. You're right that there were miracles, but we need to use our own science, our own knowledge when we do this, and therefore it should be shel shayish and it should not be shel kesef, because we're not allowed to. It's not a question of ein somchen alanes. We don't plan around miracles. It's not about somech alanes. We know it's going to happen, but we're not allowed to do the layout of the Beis Hamikdash in that way, and therefore the first table that we put it on the way in, the lechem apanim, was a table of shayish and not a table of kesef. Let's say that we ran out of flour and all we had was the lechem apanim from last week. Should we take it out? I mean, at some point it's gonna expire, halachically speaking. So what should we do? So it says the Gemara, Amar Lon, or we lost it back to them. See, the pasuk writes, the Nasata al hashulchan lechem panim lefanai tamid. The Kodesh Baruch Hu says there always has to be lechem apanim, and therefore, and powerfully, says the Gemara, lechem panim afilu pasol. Unbelievable. Even if the lechem apanim is pasol, it's better to have some than to have none. Who would have thought it's pasol? Why is that considered a covered before Kodesh Baruch Hu? But that's the drush of the pasuk. Says the Gemara, Sar Shulchanos Asar Shlomo. Shlomo made 10 tables. Dechsiva Yad Shulchanos Asara. Vayanach behechal chamisha miyamin v'chamisha mismol. And Melech Shlomo, he made 10 of these tables, and there were 5 on the right and 5 on the left. And we're going to have to analyze this. Now, in Tamar chamisha b'daran v'chamisha b'tzafon. If 5 were on the south and 5 were on the north, so v'halo eina shulchan kosher ala b'tzafon, they have to be on the north side. That's the only place where they're going to be considered halachically kosher. Shne'emar. The tables have to be only on that side. They can't be on the other side. What then do you mean? It can't be north and south. That doesn't work. There was a table that was made by Moshe, and these were 5 to the right and 5 to the left, but it wasn't north and south. It was east and west. It was on a different axis, and that left for the tables to be perfectly kosher. The Brisa continues. Afal pikein lo haya misader ela b'shel Moshe bilvad. Shenemar sashulchan asher alav lechem hapanim. They only put the lechem hapanim on that of Moshe's table, but not on the other 10 tables that Shlomo made. However, the Brisa says in the name of Rabbi Yossi that that's not true. Rabbi Yossi be Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no, al kulan haya misader. Shenemar es hashulchanot ve'aleihem in the plural lechem hapanim. They were put on a variety of them. So that's what the Gemara says where they were. Let's just end with one last piece and then we will stop. Says the Gemara, Tani Mizrach Umarav Hayunisunim. The tables were put to Mizrach Umarav Divrei Rebbe. However, Rabbi Lazar, Reb Shimon Omer, Safon Vidaram Hayunisunim. No, they were put north to south, but we learned that that's a problem. We already said you can't have them be on the south wall. If it's east to west on the northern side, that works perfectly. Kulhen Ru'i and L'Sheirus, all of them fit within the pasuk that the tables are on the northern side. Manda Amar Safon Vidarum, the one who is of the opinion that they were north and south, Nimsa Shulchan Vidarum. It doesn't make sense to say that, so that causes a big problem for that sheet in the Tanaim. And the Gemara leaves this with a question. We'll stop right here and pick up with Daf Yomi and Yud Testament Aleph. Is it today Wednesday?
Yeah.
Do a Mir Hashem a blot and a half tomorrow night. Wishing you all a beautiful night.
Got it.